here with Andy Tuller from Tuller, McNeilis, and Feld. The firm was started in 1988. Andy's firm does ground-up development, redevelopment of office buildings, does retail, and does office interiors. Andy, just give us a little flavor of the firm and tell us a little bit more about the firm.
Sure. Well, Tuller McNeilis Feld it's a boutique firm. We're in New York City. We started in Soho and then moved to Midtown. And like Richard said, we do corporate interior work. I brought a new partner on who is very proficient in doing building repositioning and renovation work, as well as new construction.
We're here today to talk about what is a pre-built.
So a pre-built is a space that is essentially designed and built prior to actually having a tenant. It's usually laid out minimally with a conference room, an open pantry, an office or two, a server closet, and storage and coat closets. The idea is that a smaller tenant who doesn't have the time or the resources to find a space, negotiate a lease, design a space, file it, price it, build it, get it signed off, can move in very quickly with very little work. A lot of times they come out of, say, a WeWork, and they've grown so quickly that they just can't stay where they are. They need to be out, say, even within a month. So these spaces are ideal for them. And in cases, if the landlord doesn't provide furniture and IT wiring, that would generally be all they have to do, and they can move right in.
So what is the typical size of a pre-built?
So the ones that we do are typically between 2,500 and 4,500 square feet. That seems to be the sweet spot for these smaller tenants.
If the tenant needs a couple more offices, how do you plan for that?
So the biggest cost for these spaces is your infrastructure, is your mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and fire protection. So we'll lay out the space showing maybe 2 or 3, depending on the size of the space, 2 or 3 more offices, maybe even an additional conference room. We will design the infrastructure of the space. It's just minimal work if a tenant needs to add another couple of offices. So to that end, we'll lay out the lighting so that if a wall is put in, the lighting makes sense in the office. We'll lay out a sprinkler head in each location. We'll have an air conditioning at each location. So if a tenant says, I want 2 more offices or another conference room, we'll put up a front wall. We may, depending on where it is, we may have to add some electrical, but that's it, and they're ready to go.
The largest pre-built you've done is about 13,000 or 14,000 square feet.
Right.
Do you have to design it differently? What do you usually do with this? This is a lot. This could cost a landlord $2 million to do a pre-built like that.
So what we will do is we'll design a large space. It can be broken up into smaller pre-builts. We'll avoid putting, say, an internal, like a pantry between what could be a demising wall, or an IT room on what could be a demising wall. So if a tenant came in and they wanted to take half of that space, we could put in a demising wall and they're done. And then maybe another entrance door. If you want to divide it up into 4 spaces, we'll design it so that you could put 3 demising walls and divide it up into 4 spaces.
So one of the other questions I always hear when I go to a landlord and say, you should do a pre-build. I build this space 3 years down the road. I have to demo the whole space. So I don't want to do a pre-build because I'm losing money. So how do you get around that?
So the pre-built has to be designed, obviously, in very good taste, but it has to be designed simply to not only stand the test of time, so over, say, 10 years, because a lot of pre-builts are only occupied maybe for a year or 3 or 5. So there may be 2 or 3 different tenants taking that space. So it's got to live for a while, where you're not injecting a lot of design that may be objectionable to some tenants. So to that end, blacks, grays, whites are always very tasteful, very simple. The walls are painted white. If a tenant wants to paint it red, they can certainly do that. But if you start off by painting that wall red,
right, you
may turn off some tenants, even though you say to them, well, we can always just repaint it white or paint it green or whatever color you want. It's already a strike against the space. So they need to be designed simply, very tastefully, and for at least a 10-year period.
In your opinion, should a landlord furnish the space?
I think furnishing is always a good idea. because again, especially for smaller tenants, it's very difficult for them to envision what that space is going to look like. Now, to that end, the landlord would have to purchase furniture, so that's an additional cost, and it depends on the building, the rent. But if they provide the furniture and the tenant likes it, the tenant can obviously buy that furniture from the landlord outright. They can rent it from the landlord, or they can have the cost of it amortized into their lease. If they don't want the furniture, it could be taken out and moved to another pre-built.
In the past couple of years, I was doing a deal and the landlord took furniture from another pre-built, somebody who moved out, bought some new furniture and put it all together. Are you seeing that too as a trend?
Since COVID and even post-COVID, a lot of tenants have just walked away from their space and left furniture. If the furniture is in decent shape and again can last for 10 years, I suggest to the landlord that they keep it, they put it into their pre-builts, or they store it. And again, if the tenant doesn't want it, they want to provide their own furniture, they just take it out and move it to another pre-built.